This is the Nintendo Switch 2, and it's the sequel to the Nintendo Switch. That means it's better than it in pretty much every way, while keeping the same concept that made the original so brilliant in the first place. Let's get into it. If you know the Switch, you already know the Switch 2. It's a gaming handheld that doubles as a home game console by putting it in a dock connected to your TV. It has controllers on the side that pop off, that become wireless gamepads, and now they have a few new tricks. The motion controls are there, they have full gamepad controls, and they now serve as mice. They're optical sensors, you put them on a flat surface and you can use them just like mice, which adds a lot of control for shooters, for strategy games, party games. There's a lot of potential here. The system itself is beefier. It's not physically a whole lot bigger, but it's bigger enough. It's now 6.9-inch screen, is 1080p. It's an LCD, step back from the OLED in terms of saturation a little bit, but it's still very bright, and at 1080p, it's way sharper than the 720p of the first generation Switch consoles. More than the screen, more than the controllers. Inside the Switch 2 is hardware that's 8 years more advanced than the Switch 1, which came out in 2017. Which means this is the first Nintendo game system that outputs in 4K. Which is kind of big because the PS5 and Xbox Series X run 4K, and they came out in 2020. So now this system, this little handheld, $450, more expensive than a Nintendo Switch, but cheaper than the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, runs with the big dogs of 5 years ago. Next generation comes out, PS6, Xbox, whatever they call the next one. Probably going to be way more powerful, but also way more expensive, and probably not a handheld, so there's a lot more power for modern third-party games. Launch titles are Cyberpunk 2077, which is kind of a big deal, even if it came out a few years ago. Hitman World of Assassination, and not the Switch version that was a cloud model for Hitman 3. This is an actual, it runs locally on the system, and it looks good. I've played a lot of games on the Switch too, and they play really well. They come close to PS5 XSX games, same type of game, again, Hitman, Cyberpunk. They're in swinging distance and they run at 4K 60, 60 hertz refresh rate. I'm not going to guarantee you're going to get a flat 60 frames per second frame rate, but it still runs pretty well and it feels like, again, a modern system, this generation rather than last generation. 4K, Nintendo, it's kind of new. And on the system itself, on the screen, it's bigger, which is great. 1080p, which is sharper, 120 Hz variable refresh rate, so it's smoother, and when it's running at a lower resolution, you're going to get games that run smoother. So yeah, it's not going to be 4K on the handheld, but it's going to be way smoother, and it shows. It looks great. Weirdly enough, you can get 120 Hz on the TV, but it's not VRR, and you need to crank the resolution down to 1080p or 1440p. Take what you want. When I'm on TV, I kind of prefer 4K 60, but the options there, more options are great. If you're a Nintendo Switch Online subscriber with the expansion pack, that's a $50 a year subscription, you get the whole slew of NES, Super NES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, etc. games that are on the Switch, plus GameCube games. Right now, there are only 3. There's F-Zero GX, Soul Calibur 2, the one with Link, and Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. It's a shame that Wind Waker HD hasn't been put on the Switch, but at least there's something. And there are a lot of bangers on the GameCube that are going to come to this eventually. So that's something to really look forward to. And there's a really promising launch window too. It starts with Mario Kart World, which is out now, and it's a great game. Then there's Donkey Kong Bonanza coming, Kirby Air Riders, new Pokemon Legend, Metroid Prime 4, which we've been waiting so long for, and that's all before the end of the year. So a lot of good first-party games and a lot more third-party games. And besides that promising launch window, there's pretty much complete backwards compatibility on here. There's some exceptions and some games that don't run quite well on the Switch 2 as they do on the Switch, but for the overwhelming majority of Switch games, you can run them on this just fine. They're going to run like Switch games with some exceptions though. A couple games are getting patches to take advantage of the power, but those that don't are going to play like Switch games. There are, however, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games, which are Switch 1 games that are getting enhancements to run in 4K, to run at faster frame rates, and in some cases even get extra features and content. It launches with the Switch 2 editions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the 2 huge Switch Zelda games, and they run smooth in 4K, and they look gorgeous. It's actually really stunning. And these are games that ran well on the original Switch, so seeing them run at 60 frames per second in 4K, it's amazing. Kirby and the Forgotten Realm is going to get its own Switch 2 edition, and it's going to have like a whole extra campaign, which is really cool. Super Mario Party Jamboree, also going to have a Switch 2 edition. You are going to pay a little bit for these games that have Switch 2 editions, the Zelda games, extra $10 though. If you're a Switch Online Plus expansion pack subscriber, you get those upgrades for free. For Kirby and Mario Party, $20, but they have a lot of extra features. Whether that's worth it or not, we'll have to see. We don't have them yet. And there's a lot of other games coming. So This is a really strong launch. At least it's a strong launch for any Nintendo system without a mainline Mario or Zelda game coming out, but we're getting Metroid. That's great. Power-wise, temper your expectations. Yes, it's 4K 60. Yes, it can do 1080p 120, but it still isn't quite as powerful in terms of how it feels, how the frame rates really settle into, as the PS5 and Xbox Series X, and definitely not the PS5 Pro. But those are systems that are more expensive, even if they came out 5 years ago, physically bigger, so there's more area for hardware and thermal design issues, and they don't have to deal with a screen or any portability. So it's like comparing a laptop to a gaming desktop. With that in mind, this is a fantastic system. There's one big drawback though, and it is battery life for this is about 2 to 6.5 hours depending on the game you run. That's launch Switch numbers. That's pretty much how much the original Switch lasted in 2017. Now, both the original Switch was updated and the OLED Switch came out to instead have now 4.5 to 9 hours of battery life, and that's a big jump. And PC gaming handhelds like the OLED Steam Deck, they have longer battery life too, although again, the game you run and how intensive it is in terms of using the hardware, that's going to wildly affect the battery life for all of those systems, but this is still on the low end, and it's a disappointment. That said though, this is still a comprehensive generational upgrade from the Switch. It's a better system in basically every way except battery life. It is more expensive at $450, but that's still as much or less than the other home game consoles, and this is portable. There's a lot to it. Now I have every game system, I have gaming PCs, I had an OLED Switch that I used to death, and that's kind of what matters. It's not as powerful as other hardware that is more expensive and bigger, even if it's a bit older. This is still a Nintendo system, so temper your expectations even as the most powerful Nintendo system. That means it's a pretty good game console in terms of hardware. But the games on it, the portability, the design, the feel, it means I use it a whole lot more, and that's been the case with the Switch. I can just play a game on the couch, I can do pretty much whatever. I played it on the commute here, I can play it on my TV, and yeah, I'm still going to go back to my beefier hardware to play bigger games, but now big games can run on this too, and they're going to run in 4K. That's a pretty great package. This isn't perfect, and it's not cutting edge outside of the context of Nintendo, but it's still a fantastic device. And it earns our editor's choice. If you want to learn even more, my review of the Switch 2 goes into way more detail, and we have a lot of other content about the Switch 2 as well, comparing it directly with the Switch 1, how games run on it, first impressions, review of Mario Kart. So go to PCMag.com and check it all out.